Hello my friends, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about how I grew my glutes from this to this. Now I do first want to say that you don't have to grow your glutes if you want to. I just think that everyone has the right to make the changes in themselves that they want to make. I hope that if you're watching this that you don't feel like you have to have massive glutes because that's the trend right now to value yourself and feel valued by others. If you have people in your life who make you feel like you are less valuable based off of your looks and not based off of who you are as a person, then it is time to get yourself into a community and get yourself surrounded with people who make you feel like you are a queen or a king or a god or a goddess. I think we all have the right to feel that way, but sometimes, just sometimes, we have goals and we want to see what it will feel like and look like and be like to experience this version of ourselves or this version of ourselves. And we all have just this one life, so if you want to experience what your life looks like and feels like, hi buddy, to have big, massive, glutes, I don't know what I'm saying. So anyways, let's sit down, bud. This is your how-to guide on building some massive glutes. But how about after the video, this boy, I know buddy, how about after the video? So when I first got involved with fitness, I of course was intrigued by the bodybuilding world, growing glutes, growing biceps, getting strong as heck. But of course I had that aesthetic curiosity. What was it like to grow massive glutes and massive muscles in general? I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. There were three major mistakes that I personally made and that I see a lot of other people make in growing their glutes. And the first one is, when I first got started, I followed what everyone else was doing on YouTube, and it turned out I was doing things that were just not optimal for me, while they could have totally been optimal for someone else. So certain things like where the bar or the weight is positioned or the stance for your feet. So an example of this would be choosing a wide stance glute bridge or hip thrust versus a narrow stance glute bridge or hip thrust. They both target the glutes, but one may be better for me and one may be better for you. As a beginner, the best way to kind of monitor this is based off of mind-muscle connection. You can get an assessment from a trainer and learn more about this. Now, if you're with a trainer, then they'll give you verbal and physical cues to help you cue and target the correct muscle, but it's best to choose a variation of an exercise that you can actually feel the muscles activating where you want them to and where you have the best mind-muscle connection. A lot of times you will lose that mind-muscle connection if you have imbalances in your muscles. So if you're not feeling it in the right places, it could be because there's an imbalance. Another way that you could choose the incorrect exercise, which I see this happen all the time, and that is choosing exercises that aren't actually going to grow your glutes at all, even though they are a glute-focused workout. Now we see this all the time on Instagram. I don't see it as much on YouTube, but it could very possibly be on YouTube as well. And they'll do exercises that are great for activating the glutes, but activating and warming up the glutes are not the same as building your glutes. An example of choosing exercises that aren't necessarily going to grow your glutes are doing things like clamshells or doing things like side steps. And I wasted years doing this. I wasted probably like 2-3 years doing these types of exercises, and therefore I did not really grow my glutes at all. So I'll throw on the screen some pictures of my glutes and my body, I guess, from before I started training and the first couple of years, and you can tell that there's not a major difference between the beginning and 2 years in. If you train really hard and you train well, you can make a major transformation. It's just that this was before I became a personal trainer. This was before I really started to learn and understand the body a little bit more and how it should be trained. Now, the second reason why I didn't initially grow my glutes, major reason why a lot of people don't grow their glutes as quickly, is because they are using the incorrect technique. If you are using improper technique, you are using incorrect muscles. If we're not training our glutes correctly, we're not really training our glutes much at all. So here are some examples of movements that you will typically see done incorrectly, that you may even find yourself doing incorrectly, that I also used to do incorrectly. The first one is hip thrusts. You will oftentimes see people rounding their lower back instead of rounding their pelvis up towards the ceiling. You can go back on old videos and see that my glute bridges were not where they should have been. Back extensions. Now with back extensions, you will oftentimes see people do the same exact thing where they're rounding their low back. And a third example is during squats, you will see people not fully lock out at the top. They'll come up with their hips just slightly bent back, which means you're not fully locking out those glutes. You will also see this in deadlifts as well. So just make sure that when you are doing these movements, you are completing the movement, and locking out is one of the functions of the glutes in those two movements. You don't need to over thrust either. You'll see that happen a lot. When you over thrust, you put it into the low back. Think of standing up like a pencil. That's a really good cue to use when you're doing squats and deadlifts. And the third thing is not having mind-muscle connection. I even wrote a post that hasn't gone up on Instagram yet. I write so many posts all the time. It was a philosophical post about having a mind-muscle connection with life. But I think it's a really good point that we go through our lives going through the motions rather than getting really connected with the moment. And when we do that in anything in life, we are not getting the full effects of those activities that we're doing because we're just going through the motions. When we are doing these movements, we need to think, I'm keeping tension in my glutes, I'm fully coming up, I'm squeezing my glutes at the top. The thing with this is when you are doing this, you might have correct form and correct technique. So it is up to you to be connected. You will see better results from actually staying focused rather than going through the motions. And even people who are advanced, they still focus on mind muscle connection because that's how important it is. So now let's get to the juicy part of the video, and that is how to actually train our glutes effectively. The first tip is to train 2 to 3 times per week. Realistically, when you're first getting started, you're not going to be able to go so heavy, but what you can do is increase your training volume via training frequency. When you're first getting started and building up that mind muscle connection and building up that form and your technique, training more frequently will help your mind really create better mind muscle connection, and it gives your body time to practice that form and technique. The next one is to superset a compound movement with a more isolated glute focused movement. This would be doing something like a squat, a barbell squat, and supersetting it with a glute bridge, or doing a sumo deadlift and supersetting it with a glute med kickback, or doing a reverse lunge with a forward lean. The forward lean gives you a little bit of more glute activation. Superset with a 45-degree hyperextension. So the second movement is going to be your more glute focused movement, your glute bridges, your hip thrusts, your 45-degree hyperextensions or any back extension, your kickbacks. Those movements are going to target the glutes a little bit more. And then those compound movements are your squats, your lunges, your deadlifts. Those things don't just target the glutes, but they require multiple joints to work together. So that means the glutes do assist in those movements, although they are not the main movers. That is how I structure all of my clients' programs who want to grow their glutes. And that is how I also structure my glute focused workouts. Although I don't specifically train for aesthetics right now, it is something that when I am doing power building, it is how I structure my workouts in those seasons of my life. Next thing is progressive overload. Progressive overload is required for progress. If you do not have progressive overload, you will not see progress. Progressive overload is just anything that adds training volume each week. So as a beginner, the simplest way to focus on progressive overload is to add weight each week and you will see progress. So this one kind of goes with what I talked about earlier, and that is doing body weight exercises like the clamshells. If you want to grow your glutes, you cannot do just body weight. I think a lot of people do get confused when it comes to this because they will do exercises and say, I feel it in the glutes though. I feel my glutes working. They must be growing. My glutes are sore, my butt is sore. But just because, again, you feel soreness in that area, and just because you feel that activation there, that does not mean that you are actually progressing in those areas. I feel sore all the time in areas that, like in my abs. You joking? Like, this is what my abs look like. But I always feel my abs being sore. That doesn't mean my abs are getting ripped and jacked. My abs are not growing. They're assisting in keeping me upright in heavy squats, but my abs are not actually the main mover, and I'm definitely not going to get abs from doing squats because you need to do actual hypertrophy work to really see the abs pop. So if you do want to see your glutes glow, what? So if you do want to see your glutes grow, you want to lift heavy, and I'm so happy to see a lot of people on social media talking about this. All right, let's talk about rep ranges. Rep ranges can really technically, to build muscle, range from 6 to 12 reps is the optimal for building muscle. But for beginners, you don't want to just jump into the 6 to 12 because you want to focus on mind-muscle connection, you want to focus on form and technique, and you really want to practice. The next tip is to stick with the same exercises and movements for 3 to 4 weeks. The reason for this is because it's not that you can't make progress by switching up the exercises constantly, but what does tend to happen, and a lot of people get stuck with this problem, is they'll switch things up a lot and then they won't ever be progressing because they're not able to monitor and track their progressive overload. Versus if you follow a program that has the same movements, you can actually focus on progressive overload. So every 3 to 4 weeks is when people typically switch up their exercises and their movements to a different variation. Now let's talk about nutrition. This can be a very touchy subject, so I want to address this in a lighthearted way, but nutrition is very important when you are trying to grow your glutes. I think as women, we are constantly pressured. We're pressured to have massive glutes, but then we're pressured to be lean and have a small waist and ripped abs. And we're pressured to have all of these things that are so hard on us mentally because we just want to be happy and we just want to be accepted. That's what we all want. And we sometimes feel like we can't do those things unless we look a certain way. I do know that a lot of women are constantly stuck in this diet mindset of feeling like they have to diet year round and they can't just eat intuitively, and if they are eating intuitively, then they're self-conscious of their bodies rather than just loving themselves and accepting themselves, because society makes it hard to do that. Let's talk about nutrition now. We are constantly in this mindset of we need to cut, we need to restrict calories at all times, and when we are trying to grow anything, especially our glutes, we don't want to be cutting. We don't want to be in a caloric deficit. So it is important, if you're trying to grow your glutes, to eat in a calorie surplus or calorie maintenance. But you do want to eat foods that help fuel your workouts. You want to eat foods that help fuel your recovery so that you can grow those big juicy glutes that you want. And if you struggle with appetite, if you struggle with nutrition at all, I do have a nutrition PDF. I don't think I even mentioned this on YouTube, but I do have a nutrition PDF that I released last month that kind of talks about the basics of all of this. If you struggle with appetite, if you struggle with meal planning, if you struggle with even understanding the basics of nutrition like macros and micros, then check out the PDF. Half of the proceeds do go to Feeding America, which helps to support our communities, to low-income families, so that children and families can get food. So it goes to a good cause, and it also helps you. So if you want, you can check that out. I will link that in the description as well. So the first point, since that got all jumbled, is to not eat in a caloric deficit, to either eat at caloric maintenance or in a slight surplus. And a slight surplus would be 100 to 200 calories. Again, this will be in the PDF as well if you are interested. Second thing is to increase your protein. How much protein you should eat is really individual, but a lot of people will throw around 1 gram per body weight or 1 gram per lean body mass. What I typically say is anywhere between 20 to 30% is what I've seen to work best for people, but this can be different. 15% of protein is also healthy. It is something that will be very beneficial for your recovery. The third thing, eat your carbs. The reason why carbs are important for your training is because they fuel your workouts. They are your body's main source of energy, so they are important when it comes to training. Another thing is also that when you eat carbs, they get stored in these babies right here, or I should say, these babies right here. Okay, that was enough of smacking my ass, good lord. Did you just see my feet? I hope not. I don't know what's happening. I'm just a little wild creature today. Your body is going to start storing carbs in those muscles, and guess what that does? It makes your muscles bigger. So carbs, instead of getting stored in the fat, they're getting stored in the fat ass, baby. And the last thing is to prioritize sleep. We, as a society, do not prioritize recovery and sleep enough. I think what we do is we overwork and then crash and burn and feel like all we can do is sleep, or all we want to do is sleep. When we neglect recovery and sleep, we not only risk losing gains because we're tired and less effective in the gym, but we also lose gains because sleep is where our bodies recover and rebuild. So if you're not sleeping, you are going to risk your gains. And on top of this, when you are not sleeping, you are going to risk overtraining. When you risk overtraining, you are then risking injury. So those are the 3 biggest things: the training, the nutrition, and the sleep. But I hope this video helped you, because this is what I needed to hear when I was first getting started. The difference in my glutes came from following what I just told you. So if you guys start implementing these things right now, today, and give yourself 3 months and follow the phase 1, 2, and 3, you will see a transformation. Don't forget to take transformation pictures, because our minds have a way of convincing us that we're not making progress at all, even if our pants sizes are changing. We see ourselves every day, so we don't see the changes that are being made. So taking progress pictures in the same outfit, in the same lighting, at the same angle, those things are important, just so that you know that you are doing the right thing. That is it for this video. I hope you all grow the biggest, juiciest glutes of them all. And that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. I will see you guys in next week's video, and love you. One more thing I forgot to mention to you guys in the video is I have launched a self-care newsletter where I share my favorites in mental health and mindset and self-care in general, all of the pillars of self-care, which includes nutrition, fitness, reading, mindset, meditation. It's like all of the things, music, that really help to enhance our self-care. And if we have our self-care on lock, then our lives are going to drastically improve. And mental health, mindset, all of these things are so incredibly important to me. It's something that comes up the most in personal training. It is something that not only helps people excel in their fitness, but it helps them excel in all aspects of their life. It helps you excel in confidence, in career, in social lives, and just in every freaking aspect. Self-care and mental health are really important to me, so those things basically are just starting to mesh with my channel a little bit more. And I think it's relevant in fitness, because a lot of us get started in fitness because of issues with confidence or issues in not feeling accepted, and it's what we all want. So those themes are going to come up a lot more on my channel. That is that, and I think that's officially it. I will see you guys in next week's video.